we are going to take the quiz for sizing elements because we just finished taking the sizing elements lesson. And so the first question, oh, that's a lot of questions. When percentages are used to size height and width, dimensions are set relative to which of the following? The parent of a child element. If we're talking about, I don't know this one. I think it's either the root element or the parent. I mean, it depends. If we're the child element, then it's a parent. Correct! When using percentages to set the height and width properties, dimensions are relative to the parent element of the element whose dimensions are being set. The height property in the code below should be set to which of the following values to ensure that the image remains proportional to its original size. Should be set to which of the following values to ensure that the image remains proportional to its original size. Remains proportional to its original size? The original size. Auto. Setting height to auto ensures that the height of the image will automatically scale. Correct. Setting height to auto ensures that the height of the image will automatically scale proportionally to the explicitly set width. Will automatically scale proportionally to the explicitly set width. Setting height to auto ensures that the height of the image will automatically scale proportionally to the explicitly set width. Height of the image will automatically scale proportionally to the explicitly set width. The height will scale proportionally to the width. Okay. Oh, okay, so the width is fixed, but the height follows that. Assume the default font size of a browser is 12 pixels. The following code will size a paragraph's text to how many pixels? It would be 150% of 12. That's 12 plus 6 equals 18. The piece element starting font size, which was inherited from the root element, multiple of the p element starting font size is equals 18 pixels. What is needed to change the default font size of the root element? What is needed to change the default font size of the root element? What is needed to change the default font size of the root element? The default font size of the root element, and we can just target the font size of the root element. Uh-oh. I knew it. It was either this one or that one. The root is not a valid HTML element. Instead, if we want to target the font size property of the HTML element, also known as the root element. Wait a minute, I chose the root element? Why didn't... Oh. It's not a valid... I knew that. What percentages are used to size, padding, and width? Dimensions are set relative to which of the following? When percentages are used to size, padding, and width, dimensions are set relative to which of the following? What percentages are used to size, padding, and width? What percentages are used to size, padding, and width? Dimensions are set relative to which of the following? The padding. Oh, it's relative to the width of the parent element. Correct. When using percentages to size the padding and width properties, dimensions are set relative to the width of the parent element of the element whose dimensions are being set. The following code will size all H1 elements in splash section to how many pixels? In splash sections to how many pixels? The splash section, H1 elements in splash section to how many pixels? The H1 will be 1.5 times 16. That will be 16 plus 8, which is 24 pixels. So splash section H1 starting font size, which was inherited from the dot splash dash section, times 1.5 em, multiple of the splash section H1 starting font size. Oh, there's more. Which is equal to 24 pixels. They wrote out the whole equation. The code below will display images in which of the following ways? This was the thing they told us to memorize. It was a very common practice to do. Oh my god, I didn't mean to press that, but let's see. What does it say? Images will shrink to the full width of their container scale unproportionally but display entirely. Whoa. Max width. Make our dot container image element shrink to the full width of the dot container element. Height is auto. will allow our image to scale proportionally with the width and the overflow hidden. The property on the dot container element ensures that if the image dimensions exceed the container dimensions, the overflowing content will be hidden from view. I have to read that again. The max width. So this max width 100% will make the image element inside of that container shrink to the full width of the container element. So whatever this width is, and the height auto will allow our image to scale proportionally to this width with the width, and the overflow of the parent element set to hidden will ensure that if the image dimensions exceed the container dimension, the overflowing content will be hidden from the view. So what's the correct answer? Images will shrink to the full width of their container. Images will shrink to the full width of their container, scale proportionally, and display partially if the image dimensions exceed container dimensions. And EM represents which of the following? The size of the base font in use, the size of the root element's font, it represents the width of the capital letter M in the base font being used. That was the old definition. Oh my god. So they're asking for an updated one, which is the size of the base font in use. Although EM historically represented the width of the capital letter M, today M represents the font size of the current element. In other words, M represents the size of the base font in use. Which of the following is an advantage of using relative units of measurements over hard-coded measurements? Over hard-coded, rem over, no. Yes, relative units over hard-coded measurements. Relative units allow the browser to render the web page faster. Does it? Does it? Relative units better communicate the intent of a layout. Does it? Relative units of measurements ensure consistent proportions across a website regardless of the screen size or layout. Relative units offer no significant advantage. Yeah, it says something about the consistent proportion. But I want to see what this one says. I think this is going to be wrong, and it should be this one. Yep. I just wanted to see what the pop-up answer would be, and that is relative units do not affect the time it takes to render the web page to the browser in comparison to absolute. Oh my god. That's so important. I'm going to tell my partner this. Relative units do not affect the time. The following code will set the text of a paragraph inside the dot splash section element to how many pixels. The following code will set the text of a paragraph inside dot splash section element to how many pixels. To how many pixels? We'll set the text of a paragraph inside the dot splash section element to how many pixels? Oh, they're asking for this one. It's math again. 18 times 1.5 is 18 plus 9, which is 27 pixels. Wait! I got it wrong! Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. I got it wrong. It's not 18 pixels. They took it from... Oh my god. Oh, is it because of the R? So they're taking it, basing it off of whatever the font size is in the HTML. Oh my goodness. When we're using REM, use the font size specified in my HTML selector. In this case, 16 times 1.5 will make the pixels. When using REM, use the font size specified in the HTML selector. In this case, 16 times 1.5 will make the pixel size 24. What are the multiple dimensions of a div with the following properties? What are the minimum dimensions of a div with the following properties? The minimum dimensions of a div. The minimum dimensions. Okay, so I guess we're looking at the minimum height, which is 150 pixels. 150 pixels tall, right? Or what? Minimum height. But none of them say, oh yes, 150 pixels tall. This is the only one. And the minimum width is 300, so this one. Correct, I'm correct. We got it. Min height sets the minimum height of an element, and min width sets the minimum width of an element. Here's the minimum height of div.container and minimum width. What is the difference between M and REM? REM sizes using pixels. No. And M sizes relative to the root element. No. And M sizes using pixels. This is the opposite. The second one is the opposite. The third one, whereas rem size using percentage, no. And M size is relative to the current element's font size or inherited base font size, whereas rem size is relative to the root element's font size. Whereas rem size is relative to the root element's font size. And EM size is relative to the current element font sizes or inherited base font size. where rem size is relative to the root element's font size. Correct. M size is relative to the current font size of the element. Either its explicitly set font size or its inherited base font size. The font size is not explicitly set. Rem's, however, size relative to the root element's font size. Which of the following is the root element that rem size relative to? Which of the following is a root element that rem size relative to? The rem is relative to HTML, known as the root element. In the code below, how many pixels should the font size of the root element to be set to in order to set the size of the main headings to 36 pixels? We want to set the H1 to be 36, so that means 36 divided by 2 is 18 pixels. And 36 and divide. What is this? And what is this syntax? 36 pixels and divide 2 rem equals 18 pixels. I don't get that syntax. Which of the following property value pairs will ensure that the background image of the div in the code will scale proportionally while filling the entire div? While filling the entire div will scale proportionally. Something about scaling proportionally. No repeat, meaning it does not repeat. I do know there's something with cover, but what does it belong to? The scale or the size? It sounds more like a scale thing. Oh no, it's a size thing. Background scale is not a valid CSS property. However, background size cover ensures that the background image of the div scales as large as possible proportionally to cover the entire element. If the dimension of the image exceeds the dimensions of the div, the image will be cropped, leaving no empty space. If the dimensions of the image exceed the dimensions of the div, the image will be cropped. If the dimensions of the image exceed the dimensions of the div, the image will be cropped, leaving no empty space. If the dimensions of the image exceed the dimensions of the div, the image will be cropped, leaving no empty space. So this thing will be cropped. What are the maximum dimensions of a div with the following properties? The maximum. So we're looking at the maximum. The maximum height is 600 pixels tall, which is this one. This is the only one that says 600 pixels tall, so I don't need to even check the width. Alright. Well, that was our quiz. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for media queries lessons.